great. So I'm here to talk about communication style today. Carrie asked me to come in and kind of help us identify our communication style. And I went, I don't think I've ever done that before. And then I started thinking about everything we do in student affairs and kind of do it every day with students. And especially I feel like in career development too. We work a lot with students to help them figure out who they are as a person and what are their strengths. We help them get ready for interviews. So all of it really ties a lot into communication, but formalizing this today was a little different for me. This is a new activity that I'm doing with you guys, new to me. But I think it's gonna be a fun way to help us talk about communication. I don't feel like I'm an expert in that area, but I think I'm probably amongst some of the experts, at least with it at UCSB right now. So I think it's really cool to be able to talk about this together. So, and for those of you who don't know, I'm Brittany Manzer. I work at Career Services. I'm a counselor, and I'm also coordinating our internship development. So, forgot about that piece. So we're going to use True Colors today to help us talk about communication style. Has anyone ever done the True Colors assessment? Okay, so a few of you, about half of us have. Has anyone done the Myers-Briggs type indicator? Okay, so all of you have. Okay, cool. So True Colors is kind of a spin-off of that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So it's cool that you already have a framework for this. True Colors is a way to help us talk about our personality style and how that relates to communication style. So even if you've done True Colors before, this will be a little bit different take on it today since it's really just focused on communication and because this is a quick course, so we're not gonna do that much together. So I wanted to start by communicating. I was wondering if everyone here can just take a minute and think about an individual with whom you've had a difficult time communicating with. Maybe there have been some barriers, some hiccups. I'm not gonna ask you to share a name, so don't worry, I know this is being recorded. It could be professional or personal, but have that person in mind right now, okay? And I'd like to hear what are some of the communication characteristics of that person that you found challenging to work with?
Passive aggressive.
Passive aggressive, okay.
Condescending.
Condescending. What did those things look like? How was that portrayed by the person?
They beat around the bush, so they say some things about what they're worried about, but it's not direct.
It's not direct, okay.
It feels like there's something hidden.
Hidden.
Tone of voice.
Okay. All right. So some of this is verbal, nonverbal, different communications.
Yeah, it's like the words aren't matching the tone.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so now think about your own style of communication, how you communicate. What do you think you need in order to communicate at your best? It sounds like some of us like direct, very direct communication, a lot of straightforward information.
A translator?
Translator sometimes? True, okay.
The other person's story.
Excuse me?
The other person's story.
The other person's story? So you want to hear from them a little bit more about how whatever you're talking about impacts them or what their opinion is. Okay.
Patience.
Patience.
Sometimes it's even as easy as just eye contact and you actually listen.
Yeah, that's a huge thing, right? And some people just don't naturally look us in the eye. They're paying attention, but you don't feel it. Yeah. Any other things you feel like you need? Okay, move on. So today, I want to use True Colors to help us further identify some of the strengths of our communication, but also help us be aware of what others need to communicate and how we can kind of assess those needs. I know sometimes we have that initial reaction to be kind of turned off by someone who seems like they're not looking at us in the eye or they're not communicating the way it's effective for us, but it's good to kind of have an understanding of where they're coming from. You know, there's no right or wrong communication style. It might feel like that to us because it doesn't align with our communication style, so it's good to be aware of this and get a feeling for what are some of those barriers and kind of just talk about how we can overcome them together. And the first way we're going to do that is by using True Colors. So you guys are all familiar with True Colors. I'm not going to belabor this too much, but basically there are 4 communication colors that they identify based on personality style. So blue, orange, green, and gold. All of us have a piece of each of these colors within our communication style, but we also have a natural preference, a dominant color that we will go to really naturally. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So I don't want you to feel like you're pulled in one direction or the other. Really go with your natural instinct and try not to second guess yourself because assessments are never as effective if we second guess ourselves and think about what the right answer is. Right?
What color are we supposed to be?
Yeah, I'll tell you that later once I find out what you are. So you guys kind of know where True Colors stems from since you've taken the Myers-Briggs, it sounds like. But it goes all the way back to Carl Jung and, excuse me?
That doesn't ring with Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and it's a long history, and I'm happy to talk about another day. I'm a dork when it comes to assessments and personality types, so I could go on and on about this, but it's not the fun part. Well, for you, maybe not. So we're gonna dive straight into this. I want to get you guys initial reaction right now. I want you to read each of those statements, and I want you to record on this piece of paper which one more aligns or best aligns with your thought right now about this activity or this workshop. I won't be offended by any of them. You don't have to share them with me, but I want to kind of see what your natural or what your immediate reaction is. And just write the number down any place on this paper. So the first one is, cool, this sounds fun. The second, how is this going to help me? Third, why are we here? Fourth, what is this about? Where's the agenda again? So record which one more accurately or best aligns with what you're thinking right now. We're going to come back to that in a second. Okay, so I want to start out by having you guys assess yourselves. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just going with your natural gut instinct. Some of you are familiar with this form, but to me, the directions are pretty confusing on there. So what you want to do is start with the rows going horizontally, and you're going to rank the word clusters by which one is most closely associated or related to you, so that will get a 4, and the one that is least related. So you're going to work horizontally first and rank all of them 1 to 4. After you've ranked all the rows, then you're going to work down on those columns to add up the totals at the bottom. Any questions about the form? Okay. So let's go back to my initial question. What are you thinking right now? How many of you, if you're comfortable sharing, wrote number 1? Okay. So you might have indicated that you were strong tied to the blue communication style. Was that accurate? No?
It's not my highest.
Not your highest? Okay.
Well, the highest score?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
It was the high score? Okay. And the second one, how's this going to help me? Orange. Okay.
Orange
Was that your, what was it?
orange is my low.
Okay. Yeah. The next one, why are we here? Green. That's what I would have been thinking. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? 4, what is this about? Where's the agenda again? Okay. Did that align with your top score?
Close.
Okay. Yeah. The reason I wanted you to do this is because I didn't think that they all would align with your first highest score. And that's a good indication of we all have a little bit of each of these colors of communication in us. Also, I think it's good to argue with assessments too. They're not always accurate. You know, I gave you a very limited amount of time to do it. The form is confusing. So, you know, I think it's good to kind of have a couple different activities to do around this. And I have more thorough ones that I can send you as well if you want to dive into this with your colleagues or your team and things like that too. But I wanted to kind of open up with that just to see if it did align and to point out that it probably wouldn't align with your top color. But let's look into them. We're going to look into each of the primary communication styles, particularly for our needs of communication today. So blue communication. Who's my blues out there? Who are my blues? Going blue? Okay. All right.
I have a lot of blue.
Have a lot of blue? It's hard to, don't you feel like you want the blue then? Yeah, it kind of makes you pull it there sometimes. No.
Yeah, no, I mean, I only have one that really, like gold was one.
Was one?
All the way down.
Okay.
And the other 3,
Yeah.
this is where we get along. You're my gold to my orange.
Yeah, and that's an important piece. Like we all need the other communication colors, right? We need that in order to get by and to succeed in our work and in our personal life too. So for our blue communicators, they tend to be focused on establishing relationships first. So everything that they talk about is usually focused on the individual that they're speaking to first, and that connection is really important. So because of this, they may communicate in very friendly ways, maybe sound a little bit more optimistic than others. They also might express their emotions more comfortably as well and be more open about those things. So we have a lot of blue communicators, I think, in student affairs as well. I think we definitely run across some of those. So I'm wondering, for my blue communicator in the audience, what are some of the challenges for you in being a blue?
Oh, gosh. I think emotionally before I think critically or fast.
Okay.
And I often don't come across like I know what I'm talking about because the emotion gets in the way when I actually am intelligent with the conversation. I take things sensitively or personally.
Okay. Yeah.
So those
Okay.
things.
Awesome.
I think I used to be very much more blue.
Really?
I
It's developed?
I feel like I've changed too.
I feel like I've been hardened.
But I'm really close to gold. That's weird because they seem really different. So I'm like
Yeah.
1 point away from gold. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's definitely that combination of things. And I think we change and adapt to our situations over time a lot as well.
Mental and traditional, so
Mhm.
it's like it makes sense.
Makes sense. It's a combination. So what do you think are some tips then that we could use when communicating with blue communicators?
Patience.
Patience, definitely.
Well, it's always nice to do a check-in too, like the personal one-on-one. How are you doing today?
Yeah, a blue communicator would really appreciate that, right? Yeah. Any other tips you can think of? I'm going to show you some too. So like you said, acknowledge them, acknowledge their feelings too. I think having patience is really important as well, because like you said, if someone's rushing you, then it's going to be more difficult to articulate what you're trying to say too. So having patience is really important, and not barking orders or being too aggressive. That wouldn't drive well with anybody probably, but especially someone who has blue communication tendencies. With working with blue communicators at work, I think it's important to realize they typically have a strong desire to motivate others. You know, that's something that usually drives them. So if you can give them opportunities to do that, or if you can support their goals in that way, they're going to be happier and more satisfied at work too. So I think it's important to keep in mind when you're supervising people, but also just with your colleagues, if they seem frustrated about a task, maybe it's because it's not really hitting home to what they enjoy focusing on. It's not really driving the most energy from them.
I'm really appreciating that you personalized this for us, but then now you're turning it as like pay attention to the other people and how they interact.
We're such a small group. We have to think about the others.
I'm really appreciating that.
Good, glad. Well, then let's move on to another group. So orange communicators. Do we have any orange in the audience? Okay, couple. Oh, you didn't do the assessment, Brandon. So, orange. Okay, all right. So we have three orange communicators. So orange people tend to want to share ideas or thoughts pretty quickly. So they might not need to think on it a lot. They kind of think as they speak is how I say it, right? So they just kind of think out loud. So they usually are very active, involved people, and usually also kind of more focused in the now rather than in the future. So really straightforward and action-oriented, and typically will be fast-paced, maybe seem a little bit more playful and things too because of that nature. Does that ring true for our oranges? Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna ask you the same questions. What are some of the challenges for you when communicating?
Gosh, slowing down.
Slowing down?
I was just gonna say, sometimes it's like, you're talking so slow.
Oh gosh, yeah. That's why I said patience right away, because sometimes I want to finish the sentence.
Because I have something to say.
Right? Okay.
So I would imagine people get frustrated with me in terms of just for me to slow down, to give them a moment. Something I'm really learning right now is allow for pauses, allow someone to catch up and think about it before moving on.
Absolutely.
He's teaching me that. She's so smart, but it takes her a moment. And we've moved on.
Brings you back to it? Okay. All right. So what would be some of the tips then for communicating with orange? What would you like people to do?
Well, I would rather hear what they want.
Okay. So let's do that. From the rest of the group, what do you think are some tips to communicating with orange?
Working with you, I think that I have to have exactly what it is that I want to be done ready. So and I know that in passing is probably the best way to catch her. So in passing, say, hey, you need to do this and this and this and this, and you need to follow up, and I'll follow up with you again tomorrow. So kind of giving
a little bit of information and then making sure you follow up frequently. Yeah. Okay. Does that sound like it would be good for you? Yeah. Any other things that you can think that would be helpful?
Sometimes I feel like just because I think out loud a lot, it's like I don't even need anyone to listen. I just need to get it out, and then I just so
that's good. Yeah. So sometimes just giving them the space to just
yeah, it's like I need to give people kind of space and patience and time, but I feel like I need it.
You need it too, maybe for different reasons, but we all need that patience and that understanding. Yeah, absolutely. So it's aligned with a lot of the tips they give using sound bites. It's funny that you said that right away, kind of giving a little bit of information and trying to move with oranges while they multitask, which is difficult for some of us. I know for me it's really hard. And just kind of lighten up and be patient and understand that that's how they think, that's how they communicate too. So for orange at work, They usually like to have careers that are very independent or allow them a lot of freedom, flexibility, maybe to be creative, make their own decisions too. So they'll probably get bored with something that's very routine, right? So they're not gonna wanna sit behind a desk all day. They're not gonna wanna focus on the same task every single minute of the day, right?
I have the right job for that.
Yeah, you do. Every minute's different for you. Yeah, and that's important to recognize about your employees as well, right? To understand.
That's what I'm thinking of too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe there's people that you're working with that you need to be more aware of that of and try and diversify their day a little bit or check in with them to see if that's something that's needed too. All right, let's go on to the next one. So we have our green communicators. Anyone green in here? I'm green as well. Okay, I've got 4 greens in here. So green communicators, they're usually focused on the matter at hand when they're communicating rather than on the relationship, which I feel like sometimes makes us sound cold, but I understand that, it makes sense. And usually very logical, objective, ask a lot of questions, want facts and information, also usually more big picture thinkers as well. It's usually how they're communicating too. And you may or may not like our sense of humor. So for greens at work, what are some of the communication challenges? We have a lot of us in the room. What are some things that challenge you?
People not staying on point.
Yep. Mm-hmm. They just jump all over the place, right?
There's a topic, there's a conversation, let's have the conversation about the topic.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. Yeah.
What did you say?
Oh, I was to say, that's not gonna happen in student affairs.
Right.
Well,
So-
I think that's your job as the green, is
Yeah.
trying to keep us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Topic.
And I think that's important. We really need that balance, right? And in student affairs too, when we're jumping all over the place, we need those people to bring us back to that sometimes. We might be looked at as kind of nagging, though, when we do that.
That's what I was gonna say. Sometimes I feel like we're very direct. I like feedback to be very direct, so I'll give feedback that's very direct.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can be a little bit of a.
Sometimes we have to coach her like, well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely feel like I face that a lot. And I ask a lot of questions. And I thought one of the things that was interesting with the tips for the communicators for green was that, you don't misinterpret them as insulting you or interrogating you. Typically, we just want a lot of information. We like to know. We want to be kind of experts in areas. So it comes across as questioning a lot. And if that's not your communication style, that might bother people. It might make you feel like, maybe you're insulting them or questioning their intelligence or knowledge of something, right? So kind of, skipping the small talk, which I think is really difficult to do when you're building relationships, but that's something that greens want to get to the point. They want you to stop getting off track and get to the point, what's going on. So that's something to be aware of too. So if they start to tune out while you're speaking to them, not to take it personally. Know that they're just focusing on this big picture. They got to get this thing done, right? They got to get this event planned or something. So supporting greens at work, I think realizing that a lot of times for them, work is kind of play for them. I don't know, is that true for you guys? Yeah? Your face doesn't look that excited to admit it.
Depends on what the task is.
Yeah, definitely the task at hand would matter, but a lot of times work is kind of play for us. We enjoy what we do probably a little, or we obsess over it a little too much, maybe, right? And I think because of that, we're also drawn to change a lot. I don't know if it's true for you guys, but for me, I get really bored with it. Once I've kind of solved something, I want to move on. I'm fine, someone take that program over. Now that I've got things going, I want something else. I want some type of challenge. And that's probably true for a lot of us as communicators and just in our career goals. But I think that's really, the greens portray that a little bit more. Right? Okay, so let's move on to gold. Do we have any golds? Yes?
I'm no way.
Okay, a little bit of just so close to it. So no one's, I think this is actually the third or fourth least popular communication color, actually, so it makes sense that we're not well represented here. So for golds, they typically want to kind of size up a situation before making a response about things. They might think a little bit more about things, and they're very detail oriented as well. So they usually plan ahead. They're usually pretty respectful, appropriate, maybe very traditional in some of their thoughts or their process of doing things, but very detail-oriented and usually working kind of chronological with their thought process and their communication style as well. So because this isn't a top one for any of us, let's just chat in general. What do you think would be some of the challenges for a gold communicator?
God, it's hard in student affairs, huh?
It's hard in student affairs? Okay?
We would get kind of steamrolled by a lot of people.
Yeah.
So they get steamrolled by people. Why do you say that exactly?
Just usually if people are kind of more traditional, they're more polite, they won't kind of force the issue or speak up or kind of make their point known as much as some of the other.
Yeah, that goes along the lines of them kind of on the previous slide said that they want to assess the situation first before making action or saying things. Absolutely. So some of the tips for communicating with gold would be maybe to be prepared and give them details ahead of time. That might help them function a little bit more. So maybe if you're meeting with them, be sure to send them the agenda ahead of time, which is a difficult thing to do. But kind of putting those ideas out there and not interrupting, realizing that it may take them a little bit longer to come up with what they want to say back, which it does for all of us depending on the situation. But I think that's really important with our gold communicators. So supporting gold at work, I think organization and stability is really important to them, but they also can be that person. They're usually okay stepping in that role and allowing them to assume their strengths, I think, is really important when we're working with gold. And typically for gold, also work comes before play. So maybe not not as much for the green where it is play, but it comes before play, and they will work late in order to get things done and then be able to relax afterwards. That's important to remember.
I could see like gold not getting along with like a green because they see them as like careless or they don't understand their work ethic maybe, where gold is very like obvious that they're structured and doing things right.
Okay, so the green
round the other way,
So green, it wouldn't be as obvious to gold how that they are
I could see them
oriented.
misunderstanding each other's work ethic.
Yeah, it sounds like a different work ethic, so it might be challenging.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts about gold?
I don't think so.
No?
I think that green and gold, because those are my top two,
Uh-huh.
I feel like they complement each other. Whereas I would be more.
I think orange and gold.
Yeah, orange.
Okay,
Yeah, see, orange
maybe
people.
orange and gold.
Mm-hmm.
It takes me a little bit to warm up to them, or to be able to.
Keep up.
Yeah.
Keep up.
And
Mhm.
I don't mean that in an intellectual way, but.
More in a draining way.
I think it's I mean, I understand the colors, and I've been doing this for like 6 years when I was in Res Life, so it was like, hear myself. There's variety within each color because there's some goals that I get along with really well, and then there's other goals where I'm just like, what are you doing? Why are you writing this down right now?
Right.
Just look at me and listen.
Yeah. I think it's important to remember that, one, this isn't the only piece of our personality. So that's a huge piece of it. A lot of times it's situational, but also there's a spectrum too. We're not like all the way to the gold side of things. We might be someplace in the middle with gold and then stronger with another one. So you have to keep that spectrum in mind. And a lot of times we're attracted to the opposite. So that's something that we need that balance, and we want that in our work life or personal life. And other times, if they're too extreme, that might throw us off a little bit. So I think it's an important thing to bring up. Yeah.
I noticed something like when I was reading the green, I was like, oh, that's my dad, and his favorite color is green. Like in the test, I don't know if that's just a coincidence.
That's funny. My favorite color.
How they
Well, green and blue are my top ones, and those are my two favorite colors, so maybe.
yeah,
I don't know.
are my top, and those are my two.
But we're missing a lot of colors in this, though. Yeah.
I was trying to get to the point too of like, even in your strongest color, spontaneous for one person is different
Yeah.
for another.
That's true, you define them different.
So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you can be still spontaneous and it might come off really rude or it could come off really intelligent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because I know with other oranges, some of them I'm good with, and then other ones it's like we're too strong and kind of butt heads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did an activity with the Myers-Briggs MBTI interp with student affairs leaders the other day, and I had them line up from I play before I work, or work before play before work or something. And I had them line up on the spectrum of that. And what you're saying is right. Some people that were on the same side were arguing with each other about it, but they were closer to each other really in that area, but it looked different for each of them. It's like, well, no, I can be flexible, but that's too much. And it was just really interesting to see that played out. So maybe next time we'll have to do that together. Yeah. Yeah. That was a really fun group to do it with. Yeah.
With them on Monday.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so we kind of wrapped, I know we're probably over on time, so I'm kind of wrapping up, but hopefully you were able to explore some of the strengths of your communication color and talk about what others need to communicate. I think that's a really important thing to be aware of. I know it's something that I struggle with, even when I'm emailing, and my emails tend to be very long because I'm a green and I'm very detailed and want all that information out there. And I know it overwhelms people, so I have to tailor back. So I think it's really important to be aware of those things. None of us are perfect communicators. None of us have the best type of communication, although I'm sure we could argue that. But I think it's important just to be aware of those things. So I want you to think about that individual I asked you to consider earlier, the challenging communicator in your life, and look at the color descriptions and see if you can identify which color they are. How many of you think the communicator is a different color than you are? Yeah. Everyone's still figuring it out. Do most of you feel like they're a different color than you? Anyone feel like they might be the same color? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, and that's another good reminder of what we just talked about, that you can be the same style of communication, but there's other personality traits that don't mesh, or there's still the extremes of that communication style. All right.
It's amazing that we can communicate.
It's amazing you get it done. We can all, but because we can all adapt and we can all do a little bit of that to get something done, right? So I think that's important. Remember, we're all capable of all these communication styles. If I forced you to do something, you could do that communication.
I'm sure it changes with who you're talking to too. Like I'm a different communicator at home.
Oh, absolutely.
At work, so that changes it.
The huge difference. So definitely the situation, your environment. So hopefully this was helpful in just exploring communication style. I wasn't looking to solve any problems for anyone today, but hopefully it kind of got your wheels turning and just thinking about communication. And I think in this group too, it's helpful for us to think about how we're collaborating, communicating with each other, but also student affairs, the wider campus, the community too. So I'm going to wrap up. Are there any questions about True Colors, about communication? You can always email me if you want some more assessments or more information about this. This is a really abbreviated version of this. There's a quick online quizzes too, though, if you wanted to do something even faster than this, and a lot of cool tools that I gathered while getting ready for this. So thanks for communicating with me today. I had a fun time.
Thank you.
Yep.